we are still with 99 people discussing the most difficult topic you could discuss with so many people. So let's try. I will try to moderate as far as it's needed and possible. Obviously, if we want, we also can start creating breakout rooms to discuss something about birds, especially in a breakout room, for instance. And for our talk now, we have Stefanos Chekon, Daniela Chekon, and Huub Bauma. These three, they are very much in the know of machine learning and let's say long text of the collective agreements. And next to that, are there people in the room who would like to express that they know a hell of a lot on this topic as well? Then tell us and show your face, because then we're more among each other. I know that Gritis Wiggers at least knows some about it. His team knows more. Are there others who are very much in this technical field or not? No? Then we just start. Then I would like to start first with Daniela Chekon. Why with Daniela? Because she has been the database boss for years for the collective agreement databases, and so she should be in the know of the topic. Why do we need machine learning, Dani?
Okay, so I think, especially as there are so many people connected now, a bit of more background is needed. Well, of course, Kea already explained a bit how we do the annotation, and the video, yeah, although a bit short, gave a small explanation, but yeah, I would like to wrap up a bit. So to do that, I would like to share my screen. Okay, let me see if it works. Okay. So in short, well, Pauline, you said in your first intervention, I think, that our database is global. So now this project is about Europe. So we talked about European collective agreements, but of course our database is much bigger than that. And actually it started in 2012 with agreements from other continents. We started in West Africa. Then we moved to Latin America, and then only then we started in Europe. So currently the database contains actually more than what's written in my slide. I think we are now reaching the 1600 agreements and they come from more than 50 different countries, and they are written in 28 different languages. As Kea was explaining, we annotate them by answering to around 250 questions. Of course, as Kea said, it depends on a few trigger questions. So if the trigger question, which is a general one, like are there clauses on gender and equality issues? Yes, then more questions appear, so more questions are answered. If the answer is no, then of course that part is skipped. And these questions relate to labor rights topics, so can be employment contracts, gender equality, etc. When answering to each of these questions, the annotators also select the clauses where they found the answer. This means that we end up with two datasets. One is a CSV with all the collective agreements texts in HTML format, and the other is a dataset with all the clauses. So this dataset contains the list of clauses, and to each clause a bind is assigned. So it means that that clause contains the answer to that question. Why do we have HTML? We get this question quite often. That's because we also publish these agreements, and we want our users to be able to navigate through the text. So our annotators also need to assign titles, subtitles to the chapters and the articles of the agreements. There's also a preparatory phase to this because many agreements don't come in nice plain text. They sometimes are scanned text or pictures. So there's a preparatory work to get to an HTML. Okay, why do we need to do this machine learning work? Well, that's because annotating is quite a long process. Because we, as you can see, we deal with many different languages and we can't have one annotator per language. So often the annotators need to annotate texts in languages they don't speak. So that's another issue. So what we would like to do is make it easier for them, at least to spot the part of text where the answer can be found. So that's like the first phase. Of course, the best, as Pauline was hoping, was to have it annotated automatically, so that the script also finds the answer to the question. Where we're not that far, but at least we're working on helping the annotators in making their life easier. This is a challenging task for us. Well, not only for the languages, as I said, because the resources that are available online are often for the English language. So, and some languages are not very much represented online. So it's difficult to get ready-made stuff or vocabularies or things you need to do the machine learning. Secondly, the vocabulary is very specific. So this could be both an advantage and a disadvantage, because sometimes, as the video was showing, there are words that are still specific, but they appear basically everywhere. So we need to find the really specific words for that specific question in a field that's already quite narrow. So that's the contracts, that's the labor contracts field. Third issue is that when this system was created, the annotators were asked, as I said, to select the clauses. But a clause is not a predefined unit. It can be a sentence, it can be a line, it can be a word. So what we needed to do is to have a unit to work with. So by using these two datasets, we basically combined them. So that's already done. We did, of course, the usual text cleaning, tokenization, lemmatization, etc. And we split the text, so the CBA texts, into paragraphs. And then we try to see which of these paragraphs were included in the selected clauses and which ones. And we could assign the bind, so the question, to each of the paragraphs of the already annotated agreements. And that's basically our final data set. It's a data set with cleaned paragraphs. And for each paragraph, it has either 0 or 1, whether it answers the question or not. How to move to the next one?
Mm-hmm. Well, my main question, Dani, is actually, how do you get it faster? Huh? That's the thing, huh?
Way of doing it. Well, we had started with a very simple keyword finding system, but that didn't work. That was because, as I said, you have a word like employee, which is very specific, and it has a high percentage of appearance in every clause, but it doesn't help, because then it's not specific enough for each clause. So the solution is to find one or maybe more models that work. And these are the 5 models we have in our list. We have the relative frequency model, which has been developed by Stefano, and we already have some results with it. The next one that we want to try, which is a similar model, so it's also quite simple and it's also based on word frequency, that's the bag of words model. Then we have the universal sentence encoder, which works in a completely different way, and that's the one Hoop is working on. And then we will try also BERT and Part2Vec. These are 2 other models. I think I can give the floor to Stefano to explain a bit the relative frequency model we're using.
But maybe before, let's check, because we still have 70 people in the room, whether they're still on level. Before we go to Stefano and Huub. Are there questions already? So are there questions still, or can you all follow and you love to be with us here to invent the super technique? If no questions, we go to Stefano.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's very specific, but that's how it was meant. So
no, but that is the.
I know. I see. We lost
quite a. No, but you. I think the good part is that you dare to have this in the open instead of with 2, 3 freaks, and you never know what these freaks will decide upon. So it's better to have it in the open. So Stefano, take the floor.
All right. Hi everyone. Thank you. Well, 70 people is still a lot of people. I hope people will have questions. Essentially, so as Daniela explained, I think the main task here was to try to recognize and characterize some of these paragraphs, and so distinguish which paragraphs talk about a certain subject from the others. Right? That's at the end of the day the task. The data set is great. We have a lot of training data in many different languages, and in machine learning, that's possibly the most important thing, right? Having the data. And so we're able, so the first idea was exactly to try to look at words, essentially like count the words in different paragraphs, right? So for example, if you're talking about, a paragraph is talking about violence, maybe we'll have certain words that mention either the word violence or some other words that are related to it. So first kind of the idea is to count which words happen more often there. But then, as Daniel was saying, that's not enough, right? So maybe there are other paragraphs that share some words. Probably the most common words would be like, end, or some other very common words like employee, that was mentioned in the video. So what we did, we basically calculated the frequency of words in any other paragraphs and compared that to the frequency of words in the paragraphs of interest, right? So the model learns for each bind what are the words that are more common and are more different and unique to those paragraphs compared to the others. And it produces a score, right? So this score will give you, it's essentially an average of the number of counts that this word has for each word. And then we rank these words, and we remove from this ranking the words that rank high in any other paragraphs. So we are left with only the words that rank high and are present only in the paragraphs of interest. So at that point, we then test the model. So how do we test it? We take, this is a typical machine learning technique for testing models, where you split the data set in different parts, and you just ignore one part and you keep it for testing, and instead you train the model with the remaining, right? So essentially you're just simulating a real world environment where you only have a set for training and you're predicting on a completely new data set. That's what we did. We did a 10-fold validation, which means we split the data set in 10 parts, and we use 9 to train the model and test on the remaining 10% of the data. And the results are actually pretty good. In a lot of cases, I think in NLP, so natural language processing, what I find is that simple models tend to give actually good results at the beginning. So I always start with frequency models and things like this before moving into very complex models, which we still want to do, but this gives us a baseline. And the baseline for some of the binds is really good, like especially for binds that have a specific set of words attached to it. For example, I mentioned violence, or there's others like maternity and a few others that really seems to get very good results. I have, maybe this is a bit technical. I can show.
Before you go too technical, Stefano, as I'm sure we have to go back a bit, because there is a person who says, well, but for God's sake, are all these collective agreements translated to English, or how do you manage otherwise? Which means this question first needs to be answered before you continue, otherwise they have no clue what you talk about. Please explain.
Yes, I think Dani, obviously you can come in, but essentially we have many languages, right? So all these contracts come from different contracts come from different languages, right? So we'll have a set of paragraphs in Italian, another set of paragraphs in English and other languages, but they all have the same bind, right? So they will all refer to the same violence closes, right? So in a way, we have a bridge, which is the bind. The bind is translating in every language, and that allows us to create a model that looks at violence, but across all different languages. Also worth mentioning that some of the models that can be used, I'm talking about BERT, which we can talk about, or other models that are available, they do work with multiple languages. Some of them, they even work across languages. So, you know.
Quickly check if Erland understands now. Erland, where are you? Is it now clear to you? Or do you say, how do these people manage without translating all these texts?
Yes, yes, it is clear to me, and it is as I expected, that you cannot translate all of them into English, but of course searches will be a bit more challenging. You don't even have a brief resume, a brief summary of each agreement that highlights key issues. You only upload the complete text in Italian, Spanish, Czech, etc. I understand it would demand a lot of resources to provide it in English, but like I said,
that might be Danny. Danny?
No, you're mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the limit of this is actually that, in particular of the model that Stefano is talking about, is that you need a certain number of agreements in one language to do this type of work, because you need to train your system and of
Oh, I think we lost Danny.
Danny.
Not enough as a to train our model, but for that there are other models that don't even need a training set. They don't even need a minimum number of agreements to work. Translating, I don't think it's an option, because well, at Weight Indicator we want to provide the actual text to workers. So of course workers need to access their text in their own language. And also if you translate, you lose part of the legal meaning of the text. So, and well, as you said, it's a big effort. So we don't want to go into that.
So maybe on this level, we can say that the issue of that you have different, let's say that you have collective agreements in hundreds of languages. In the end, we also have them in Amharic. That's not an issue. The issue is now how to, I mean, that's an issue we solved more or less. How to come to the next level of going fast through all these piles of collective agreements and annotate them quick, understand them fast. Stefano, you were close to showing a solution, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was, yeah, so essentially, I think you already answered most of the question around the translation, but in terms of the results, maybe showing, I have a slide I can show to give you maybe a bit of understanding. This is some of the results, for example, for the bind of violence. So essentially the model is able to find the average, so the ranking of the top words, I think is 0.4 in the bind, in the paragraphs that have the bind, and it's much lower in the paragraph without the bind. So these words are essentially more, the ones that are most common, this is for Italian language, but they're the ones that in the Italian language are most common among the paragraphs that are related to the violence bind, right? So these words, you would have a different set of words for another language, right? English, they will be different, you know, Hungarian, they will be different. But you still know that they all refer to violence. So in a way, you don't need to translate in order to find which paragraphs belong to this bind, because it's basically you're building a different model for each language, if that makes sense. And this is the result. So you can see that, okay, this is a bit, it's a kind of, again, kind of a machine learning, I think, test results evaluation system. But essentially you have on the x-axis, you see the specificity, which is how many, basically how many your model is getting wrong, how many paragraphs is getting wrong. So this is saying if you place yourself here, it's about 0.1 on the x-axis, which means that assuming you make a 10% mistake, so on 10 paragraphs, you're gonna say that one is related to violence, one is not. So you're only making one mistake, right? You get 80% sensitivity, which means you get 80% of those that actually do have that bind, you get them right. So basically the model is doing right 8 out of 10 times with a margin of 1 as an error. Which is a pretty good result if you consider that there's no manual work at this point, right? This is completely done automatically and very quickly on the data that is coming in, right? All you need is essentially a text.
And does it mean that the last 20% you still have to do it yourself? So you have to double check and control everything?
Yeah, so in this case means that 20%, you either can lower the threshold, right? So you can get possibly more errors if you try to classify more, or I mean that's the gap we want to fill with the next models, right? So that's our baseline, and I think the challenge is getting the last 10 or 20%, right? That's often the matter in machine learning. You get very good at like 90%, and then to do the last 10% actually takes a lot of research. So we're getting there. I think maybe, I don't know if we have time, because I'm conscious of time as well. Maybe Hub, you can talk a little bit about the universal sentence encoder, because I know that's a more advanced model in some way. This is kind of a classical approach, I would say, but natural language processing moved a lot and quickly, and it got now into the whole embeddings world. I don't know, Hub, if you want to talk a little bit about it.
Just a sec. Quickly, I have still a question for you, Stefano, and that is from Jana. She said that 20% mistakes, does that tend to be false positive or false negative?
Yeah, so you have 10% of false positives and 20% of essentially, you don't get them, right? So they're false negatives.
Okay. Now,
sorry, wait, there is a question about Turkish agreements. They're asking if one has got the CBA text in Word or PDF, how will you make use of it in your system? Well, we have quite, I think 25 Turkish agreements in the system currently. Well, as I said, if it comes in Word, that's the best, because to convert Word into HTML is really just, it's very easy. PDF can be more difficult. We use an OCR software for, to do text recognition, which is sometimes very much time consuming. I mean, it helps. It's not like retyping, but it still needs quite a lot of human check, because it depends on the quality of the text, basically. But yeah, of course, we collect many agreements, even in Europe, that were not in nice Word text format.
Thank you. I still,
other questions actually.
Question that we go to Huub, or you want?
There's another question there. How do you move to other topics and queries?
Nice question.
That's a good
Can
question.
you pick it, Stefano?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think definitely considering semi-supervised or active learning. I think for people maybe are not familiar with machine learning and so on, there are other ways of training your models, right? One way is when you have some data is already annotated, like in our case where you have binds already linked to paragraphs. In other cases, you might not have that. So you can just maybe tag a few of them and then let the model kind of adapt itself and try to automatically self-tag the documents in a way. That's considered like semi-supervised. It's a bit difficult to explain, but basically, depending on what data you have available, right? Again, I think we're quite lucky to have a very good data set here to start from. But definitely, if you start moving to new topics and queries, and if there is no, there might be cases where maybe it's more difficult to get annotations quicker, I think we're going to definitely explore other techniques like semi-supervised or active learning. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Huub, please add. So Huub is our developer for the wage indicator. He has been a developer for the collective agreement database as well. And of course, he's keen to have a system which makes everything more automatic. Huub.
Yes, I'm not sure if everyone can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Put your mic a bit louder or go closer to the mic, and then all is fine.
Louder, okay. Let me check. And I hardly ever use this. I hardly ever talk to people.
Yeah, I thought you were against Zoom, isn't it? So,
yeah,
but sometimes it's good to talk.
Yes, I know. Let's see. Headset, microphone. Move it up. I'm not sure. Is this better?
Voila. Much better.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to start off, this is the work that's been done so far. That's I think it's only for detecting or linking the paragraphs to a certain topic, like to a question, for example, like, is there any clause on maternity leave? Then yes, it can find the paragraph or identify that paragraph, but it doesn't really. And in this case, that question could probably be solved easily because it's a Boolean kind of question with a yes, no. Okay, so that's okay and doable. But then there are many sub questions or subsequent questions on that as well. Like if so, then how many hours or what are the specifics? And that's not really. We haven't looked into that yet. So, and I think that's probably a lot of where a lot of time-consuming work goes in as well. So I'm not sure how close we are to getting the automatic encoding of the CBAs done, but I think identifying the correct paragraph for the part that you're annotating on or where you're working on would be helpful. Quite helpful probably, but then still a lot of human work is necessary at the moment, I think.
Oops, that's a bad message, isn't it?
Sorry. I think that's what I think, but maybe I'm wrong, and could be go.
But look, I hear that Stefanos thinks you're more classical. There might be a time difference or a year difference. I think it's maybe a couple of years difference or so. Does it mean that Stefanos want to have everything, let's say, self-learning, self-steering, without any human intervention, or?
I would love to have everything done automatically, but I'm not doing the annotation, so I would go crazy. It's not my job, but I think Stefanos also, his work is not really answering it's only helping to identify the paragraphs. It's not really answering the yes no question kind of questions, and the yes nos are easy, but what if it's an exact answer in amount of hours? It would be more difficult.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. There's a lot of models that we can. I think we're just in a way at the first stage. The way I see it, it's different phases. I think phase 1 is getting the right paragraph. Phase 2, which we haven't really looked at yet, but it's coming next, will be to actually help answer the questions, right? But I think the tools are there. I think they might not be perfect, but NLP is moving really fast. It's crazy to see. You cannot distinguish nowadays a text generated by a machine and by a human. Like, I'm telling you because I've tried, and you can. And it's really, and a year ago even you would. So things are moving really fast in this field. And
you mean so in half a year time we don't or hardly need our coders anymore?
Well, I don't know how fast that will happen, and it's a very complicated task.
And we have quite some coders in the room, so they of course they're listening very well. Then so, and Danny, going back to you, what do you learn of this? How can you make smart steps to have it better and faster? And faster is not for the fun of faster, of course, but it's to cater for more people, for more collective agreements, for more workers, for more trade unions, etc. So it has a purpose.
Well, I wanted to say that I've been a coder myself. And to be honest, when you have a Turkish agreement that you need to read many times, because each time you answer a question, maybe you have some keywords you translated with Google, and then you Control F the keyword and try to look for it in the text, and you have to do it many times. So having a tool that tells you, look for the answer in that paragraph, that's already quite helpful, I think, to speed up the annotation and make it even more precise, because annotators can also miss some of the answers.
Yeah, so it's a little helper. Actually.
Yes, well, it's a start. Of course.
And there is one question, somebody who says, well, but is this any way possible with legal text? what do you think? Is legal text so unique that it's not possible?
Well, I think it's related to what I said before, that it has a very specific language, yes, which can be helpful, but it can also be a trap, because and also it has its own rules so to understand what it means, it's not that immediate sometimes. Even for the coders who are speaking that language, sometimes, we have this type of discussions within the team. What do you think it means? How do you think I should answer to this? So, well, that's something a machine hardly can solve. So we need to, I think, take into account that there will always be a margin of error with machine learning, and probably human check will always be needed afterwards.
Yeah, and if I can add, I mean, what I meant here is that I think it's also very difficult so hi, I'm Jana, I'm a coder myself too. And I feel like I'm attending some AA meeting. But yeah, so what I mean is, I think when I read through these texts, and imagine that Dutch collective agreement texts are often easily 100, 150 pages. So it's a large document you have to go through. And you'll find these clauses will basically say you'll have 3 different clauses, and one of them will say the standard working week is 36 hours, and the next one will say if it's the 3rd week of the month, the standard working hours will be 37 hours. And then there will be one, if you're under 18, the standard working week will be 32 hours. And I think it's these kind of like exceptions would be very hard to code with natural language processing, I imagine, because you really need to get those identifying clauses there that will tell you whether this is the rule or the exception. And
Definitely.
they might not be
I'm
immediately
sure
after one another.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I can add, maybe on the model side, there's been a lot of successful models, especially on BERT, on fine-tuning to specific language and jargons, right? So even in the legal, I think there's already a BERT version just for legal text. It's been done. It's all in English, obviously. Yeah, but like again, for example, it's all in English, so it's not it's not perfect, the scenario, but things are going that direction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So which means you said all the small issues Jana sees, they will be solved in a couple of months, basically.
Well, sometimes, as I said earlier, doing that small 1%, improvement over the baseline is kind of maybe very difficult. Sometimes you need a breakthrough, right? Sometimes breakthroughs happen in machine learning, right? And in NLP, but it's not always the case. I think we need to try it.
So, and together you, let's say Stefano, Huub, and Danny, did you had a breakthrough already? Or was it that you were just double checking different programs and see how far you could get?
I can tell a little bit on the stuff that I did.
Yeah.
Because I was just playing around, because I had I didn't really know that what this was going on with as I was working on COBRA for many years, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to look up in the text to try to find the paragraphs which belong to a certain question. And so I was looking around at neural networks, and then there's for example, TensorFlow, which is has got quite some attention lately. And then I looked at the encoder. I just dropped it in the chat, and which is, I think it's done by Google. And so you can just it's multilingual, and you can just or you can what it basically does is it takes all the clauses in the CBA and indexes it. So it makes a multi-vector index. So it will tell you, for example, if you have a sentence or a paragraph on maternity leave, it will, let's visualize it. It will just have an arrow somewhere into space, like this is probably where this paragraph is. And so you'll have your whole CBA with all these different vectors, with all these arrows where they are pointing to. And then you can also encode the question, which, for example, the question, is there a clause on maternity leave? Then this will also point you into that same vector space, and then you can calculate the distance between those two, and you can find the nearest paragraphs, which will tell you something about this question. And this is what I was playing around with. I've not done a lot of work in it, but I've just, what I said, just playing around with it. And I thought the results were quite amazing, to be honest, more than what I was expecting. I can let's see if I can share my screen and then go through it very quickly. Okay.
Stefano, you embrace what Huub is telling, or you think it's old school? I can't see your face proper, so I'm not sure if you're happy with what Huub is explaining or not, Stefano.
Yeah.
Is the screen sharing working?
Yeah,
I can see.
fine.
Okay. So this is something which on Google you can program a little bit in it, and you can document at the same time, and there will be parts of code in between. It's called a code book, and so this is what I just copy paste somewhere, and I manipulated somewhat to have it look at COLBAR, at the database. So it actually works at our acceptance COLBAR, so it's like our test system, downloads all the texts and all the questions, and then in the end it does the indexing, which take a few minutes. I just run it, so it just takes a few minutes for one CBA. And then, for example, I went through all the annotated clauses that we have, and then I tried to match and see how well I did. So I could actually test it. I just took one specific one. I think it was Spanish. I'm not sure. And then I did a dumb. I didn't do anything nice with graphs, but I just did a dumb check. Let's see how well it did. So this will say, for example, the clause for equality monitoring. It found that paragraph in the second position. So it found multiple paragraphs, and then it said like, okay, the second paragraph I found was actually the same that was done by a human. So a human pointed at some other paragraph or word. For example, this one is number 7, then number 6, but you see a lot of them have a number 1 as well. So the severance number, tenure, severance number, imposition, maternity, nursing breaks, identified the right one, and so you see a lot of them actually have 1. Some of them are really bad as well. So commuting allowance type, position 19. So I don't know what I haven't really looked into it. I just did it, and I thought it was good. So for example, I have a little bit of manual testing here as well. So I can do, is there a clause on pregnancy, and then I can run it, and then it will tell you, it will give you these 10 results on the text. And I'm not good. I can't read Spanish, so I have no idea if this is anything like that. So I'll just pick the first one, go to Google Translate, and I don't think I shared this one, and then it will actually tell you something about pregnancy, or you can just use your own word here as well.
Seems like a good one to me.
It knows all this. It knows all these different languages as well. Is there a clause on maternity leave? But you can also use Dutch. Is iets geschreven over? Oh. And the same one, and well, now it will find protection a la maternidad, so it's probably even closer. But so you can see, you can just and this encoder I use, the Google one. It has 16 languages, so it's Arabic, Chinese, English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Dutch, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, Thai, Turkish, and Russian. So it doesn't cover all the European languages, unfortunately, but well, it was interesting. So stop sharing.
Well, thanks. So, and Stefano, when you hear this, what do you think? Does it bring you a step further?
Well, yeah, I think this, well, Universal Sentence Encoder is great. I think it was a breakthrough, and it is a breakthrough in terms of considering context around words embedding. So it's a big step forward, I think. And come on, you can see how you can quickly manage multiple languages.
I've got a question for Hoop. Does your model need a certain number of agreements in a certain language, or not at all? So it doesn't matter.
Not at all. No,
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So the model has been, imagine that model he's using has been trained before, right? This model has been built on big corpus of data, like say the whole of Wikipedia. I think in the case of Universal Sentence Encoder is Wikipedia and some other source. It's the whole of Wikipedia.
Yeah, a lot of text. Yeah. So
And
it knows.
When a text is trained, then that doesn't have to be a collective agreement, right?
Correct. Yeah.
No, it can be any text. Yeah.
Any text, huh?
Yeah.
Let's ask others what they think, whether they have smart questions. And it's not that we do something freaky, because we still have 47 people who join us in this meeting, which is not too bad. Huh? So it means that quite some people are keen to understand what we're up to. And are there more questions? Kea? Yeah.
Basically, Huub, what you showed is if we have our coding scheme available in those 16 languages, would that be a good input for your model that you're now showing? Because basically then we have all the keywords that we want to use for the coding.
Stefano is using the keywords, right? You asked me, right? So
yeah, I'm asking Huub, what you just show for maternity leave or pregnancy or whatever.
Yeah.
Basically,
the thing is, sorry, go ahead.
If we have our coding scheme and we have all the keywords in our coding scheme, and we have the coding scheme translated or not even translated, we can squeeze it into your model.
Well, the thing is, the model is I'm using is already been there's been there's a huge process power has already been used to create the model. It's a neural network, so it's basically all. You can compare it by picking someone's brain who is multilingual, and you could just tell them, look at this CBA text, and then fire a question at that person and say and asking him, in what paragraph do you think this is happening? The answer to this question can be found, and then it will give you that paragraph. So so you can't train it any further. It's not. You just have to provide the text and the context and the question.
If we have the text, we have the
Yes.
text that has to be inputted in your system.
Yes, so we can already do that.
Yeah, we can do it. We can run what Huub showed. We can already do it. That's we don't need anything else, I think.
No.
Yeah, that's one of the things we want to do, right?
So this feels like a little breakthrough today.
Yes, so I think the thing is that we need to test different models for. So you saw in Huub's result, there are some questions or some topics which were easily spotted, let's say, and some which were not. And it's the same with Stefanos' model. So what we're trying to do now is to test different ways of doing the same thing or getting to the same result and see which one works better and maybe understand why it doesn't work for certain topics. So, and then after that, we can, I think, proceed in either picking a model or maybe combining more than one.
And do you need, let's say, other, because I know that Ministry of Social Affairs in the Netherlands, they are working, wasn't it that they were working with BERT? Because that's what I remember.
Yes.
And because I thought it was so funny that you have a program which is called BERT. So you let BERT doing the work. And so Grites, is Grites still there, or Nienke? How far are you, and do you want to join this group of people who discuss, let's say, becoming more automatic and have obsolete coders? Where is Nienke and Grites? Are they still there? Or
I think Steve left, but Daniela, my colleague, is more into this topic. Can you explain, Danielle?
Hi.
Yeah.
I think Sophia is here too. She is our coder, actually. But we started this as a Startup in Residence program. So we're working together with a startup, and Sophia is our from the startup, actually the coder, and we are more on the other side from the ministry perspective. So we're working together. Is Sophia still there?
I don't know.
I think she is.
So Daniela and Nienke, you don't dare to say it. Sophia. Katrenko.
Yeah.
Aha. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I just posted my questions there because I think we are approaching a problem in a similar way. So I was just curious if there are any teams who try to use any type of pre-training, because normally the problem is that all these models that have been pre-trained already, they are built on Wikipedia data or some sort of comparable data. So it's not necessarily the language that one would see in labor agreements. But I was wondering if anyone has tried to do any or pre-train by the labor agreements, because these are small data sets usually, like, right, we are talking about 700, I believe, in the Netherlands, more or less.
So Huub and Stefano, where is Stefano? I lost him.
Yeah, he just wrote that he dropped.
So then, but Huub?
Yeah, I was just too lazy to do any of that. I just had fun for an afternoon and played around with this neural network stuff, and but yeah, I'm using a pre-trained model, which is exactly the problem, or it could be a problem. It's very generic. It's also one of the it's not necessarily all bad, because having generic stuff is also pretty good if you have it covers lots of grounds on all kinds of different kinds of CBA text. Not all text will be very will probably be written as specific in the same kind of, I don't know, vocabulary. So some of them might be more approachable for the common people to read them, I think, and some will be more or less very specific for all these I don't know, different language almost. So so having it to learn on a specific set of, let's say, 700 CBAs might also give you the problem of being too specific. So you could overtrain your neural network or your other model you have. So then what the problem then could be is you get a new company that gets a new CBA in, and the model might work very poorly because it has a different technique or different person who wrote it, and it's using a different style, and so generic is sometimes much better than being very specific, especially if you have such a small amount of documents.
Okay, sorry, because I got an answer from my brother on WhatsApp.
Yeah,
So I passed your question, and he said he checked, but he couldn't find any. Well, and to be honest, having worked on collective agreements collection for years, I can totally understand why such texts are not available, because it's almost impossible, except for some countries, to find these texts online. So it's I understand why this doesn't exist, probably.
No, definitely. I think that my question was more like, let's say, if we take BERT or Dutch version of BERT, of course, it would capture the generic language, and this is something that we would want either way. but we can also pre-train it. So we can also use a domain-specific collection to teach BERT a little bit more about labor agreements. I think the only problem that I would envision here is that the collection is relatively small, because also for pre-training or domain adaptation, researchers have been using thousands of documents. So slightly like bigger collections than labor agreements. We are still having it on our backlog to test and see what we will get. But I was just curious if anyone has already tested it in the past, because it would be interesting.
So, and Sophia, would you like to team up with Dani, Stefano, and Huub, or do you have your own path?
We are currently working on a project together with Daniela. So that's for Ministry of Social Affairs. That is about to happen. And definitely we are happy to share the findings and have the conversation. So in that sense.
Yeah, we haven't started trying BERT yet, but I think it will be definitely good to keep in touch on how we are proceeding and how things are working for both groups. So.
Yeah, and do it in time, so not after a couple of years when it's, let's say, when it's official report, because now you will still can learn a lot from each other, I assume.
Yeah. Yes, I think you're especially welcome at our demo day. Then we can demonstrate what we've been up to so far. I think this is a nice moment, so you're welcome to join us. And I think, to be clear, I'm also named Daniela, and your coder as well. But did we already send you an invite? Otherwise, we will do that again.
We absolutely would love to. And I hope we learn from this discussion. Or is it only showing information? Or is it, do we make new steps in this discussion?
I think maybe we can also do a joint discussion afterwards. So first we have a more global program also with other startup in residence. And then we have maybe like this, a specific afternoon.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
I think would be good. Are there others in the room who say, well, this is new for me and I would like to join? Or are people only listening secretly? Or maybe they're just drinking beer and stay. I don't know. So let me know. Manola.
I'm sorry, but my English is not perfectly.
No problem. We have many people who can translate if needed. So so just write.
I can translate, Manola, if you want.
Ma non ho chiaro cosa mi ha chiesto Armanda.
No, se vuoi dire qualcosa posso
No, io ho molto apprezzato, abbiamo avuto alcune difficoltà tecniche, avevo guardato Wage Indicator anni fa, prima che si facesse il progetto con il CNEL, e quindi mi ha fatto piacere inserire i nostri contratti dentro questa piattaforma. Purtroppo è vero, come avete detto anche voi, che non è semplice collegare i contratti, le diversità dei paesi, cioè ci sono delle particolarità nei singoli paesi che fanno fatica a trovare spazio nella piattaforma.
Yes, so she said she's Manola Cavanilli, a trade unionist of CGL, and she's also at CNEL. She appreciates a lot the work of Wage Indicator, and she agrees that actually it's very difficult to combine diversity, heterogeneity among countries with respect to collective bargaining. So the effort that Wage Indicator does in getting a uniform, let's say, but at the same time heterogeneous database on collective agreement is very important. If I can add,
è molto importante, cioè riuscire a conoscere i trattamenti di salario e normativi di tanti paesi, quindi il lavoro prezioso che fanno è molto importante.
From a trade union perspective, it's very important to get this comparable data because it's not so evident to have them. So also from trade union perspective is important. May I also add something that I wrote in the chat, my baby was lost, about the discussion of, let's say, the impact of technology on human work. I think that machine learning and what they showed us is very promising in the sense that it can actually upskill the work of the coder, because if you are able to select in a very fast way and without many mistakes, let's say the text, then as coder, as an analyst, you can really deep in the analysis, get to the more complex also cases where nuances are difficult to grasp at the beginning, and refine your analysis in detail. So I think that actually is a very powerful tool, and I don't see it in opposition to the human work, as it just has the possibility of enlarging the things that you can do and get to the final result, that is to have data, good data that on which you can work on. So thanks for all the work you're doing on this.
Posso dire una cosa su questo? Il lavoro delle macchine dovrà aiutare a lavorare meglio e meno i lavoratori, cioè c'è una grande possibilità di riduzione dell'orario di lavoro se usiamo bene le tecnologie, che potranno fare alcune cose molto ripetitive e che prendono tempo. Pensiamo ai notai, agli avvocati che devono leggere tante leggi, devono cercare le sentenze, queste cose alla fine le potranno fare le macchine.
Armanda or Dani.
Yeah, so she said that machine can help to improve and improve the quality of the work of people, and also reduce the working hours. That there is also that we should also put in the debate. It's not this case, but in general, no, the idea that with the help of machine you can free working time, you can reduce working time, and help workers to work better. And
yes, thank you, because on this way you bring our work in more, let's in a broader perspective. And I would say we have a last round. If there is still somebody who says, I want to say something about the machine learning and how to get be smarter, feeding BERT or any other project or program to get more CBAs quicker in the system, understand them faster, be better able to compare them all over the world, then come up now. Otherwise, we close the meeting today. You can be sure that all information as we have it now, we will share that with you the coming days on the agenda and on the project page of COLBAR, but we will send you messages about that. On top, don't forget, we have a questionnaire in which you can complete whether you were happy or not on this meeting, or whether you think it was good. Obviously, you understand that we need that type of information for EU projects. That's part of it. I would invite all people who are close to machine learning to come back, let's say in the coming couple of days, so to have a new meeting together. And to make it next level and say, come on, we're close to new solutions, sit together and fix it. So don't talk only, but fix it. So I will take the initiative to have the machine learners together. If one of you want to be part of it, then just send a message in the chat box here that you want to be part of the machine learning group who comes together to make new stuff. That's about machine learning.